Hey everyone, you're listening to the Visually Stunning Movie Podcast, the place to come if you just want some good old fashioned talk about movies. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter, VS Movie Podcast. You can just go to the website, vsmoviepodcast.com. We're on Google Podcasts, we're on Apple News, we're on Stitcher, we're on Spotify. Basically, you can find us pretty much anywhere you want to listen to us. We appreciate you listening. If you want to throw us a like, follow us on any of those outlets, and share us with your friends. We'd really appreciate it. And don't forget, if the best thing you can say about a movie is that it is visually stunning, then the filmmakers have done something dreadfully wrong. Now, let's get on with the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Visually Stunning Movie Podcast. I'm Mark. That's Ryan. Hi, Ryan.
Hey guys.
We have with us a special guest who makes it back to us every once in a while. One of our old comrades, Jason, is back. Hi, Jason.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Good. Glad you could make it.
Yep. Yeah, it's. I see a pattern developing. The Marvel movies seem to be the ones I make it to.
Well, and I'll bet we can count on Star Wars at the end of the year.
Well, remember I wasn't able to do solo, so it's not a surefire thing.
You still had a new kid, so it's okay.
And I was getting over mono.
And you were getting over mono. That will kick anyone's butt. But we are doing a Marvel movie today. I think it's safe to call it the Marvel movie, because this is it. This is the culmination of all that has gone before Avengers Endgame. Now we're going to try to do this in a spoiler-free way for you, but we will get to a point where we'll wrap this episode up, and then we're going to talk spoilers, and you're going to have to go get the other episode. We will not include spoilers in this review, so don't worry about it. But if you want spoilers, we will make those available to you. That being said, spoiler-free on this film, Ryan, is really hard. It's really hard.
Sure.
Yeah.
But that, I'm going to say that's a good thing, though, because you're 22 films into a series, and to be able to still surprise on any level and to do it as frequent and with such success that I think this film does, I think that speaks to a lot of things. I think that it's not a perfect film, but I think it is a film that will satisfy the majority of fans of the whole MCU. I'm sure that there are things that people who stick to the comics might find unsettling. I don't know, or the fact that it's different.
No, it's different from the source material.
Yeah.
So but at this point, if they haven't gotten used to that, I don't know what to say. But for me, there was a checklist of things that I wanted it to do, and it checked off those and a few other things that I didn't know that I wanted. I think, you hear 3-hour film and you think, well, that's got to be bloated. And it is a little bit, but not to a point where at any point I was like, well, this is unnecessary. This could get cut. This could get cut, which is how I felt in, say, Aquaman or, the other films where it's like, why are we doing this? Are you just padding? Well, in this, it wasn't so much padding as it was making sure that the core characters, this is basically stripped back to the core characters, got their moment, whether that's a send-off or not a send-off. Everyone really seemed to, at least get a fair amount of time, and you didn't feel cheated. Obviously, if you're looking for the newer characters, well, maybe then you'll feel. But that was never what this movie was going to be about.
No, Jason, would you say that the characters got the service, those core characters, those original characters got the service they deserved, but at the same time, the fans got the fan service that they needed?
Yeah, I would say there's definitely a lot of fan service in it. If you're a fan of all of the characters, you're most likely going to walk away happy. Just like I've always done with these as far as source material go, they kind of give clues, but think of it as a different continuity into comics. So yeah, a lot of stuff is going to rhyme, but it's not necessarily going to match beat for beat. And honestly, I don't want to know where it's going to go beforehand. So They managed, as Ryan alluded to, they managed to be very surprising in a superhero movie that, I mean, we're 22 movies in thus far. We're a decade in, and I was very surprised with the direction they went with it. I was like, okay, half hour, 45 minutes of the movie. I'm like, okay, how's this going to go? Where is this going to go? Which was very refreshing for a superhero movie, to be completely honest.
Well, to be fair, and I don't think I'm not going to spoil anything, but let's just say like 15 minutes into the film, I jokingly, and you'll know what point I'm talking about. There are random people sitting next to me. It got to a point and it cut to black screen, and I was like, and now we get 2 hours and 45 minutes of credits. because there was a definitive stopping point.
Yes, there very much could have been an ending.
Not in the grand scheme of things, but just it very easily. Yep, if that was a comic book, that's totally where they could have ended it.
Well, and I think they played with you in that way. I think that going in, we thought we were getting a particular movie, and within the first 15, 20 minutes, we got the movie that we thought we were getting, and then realized we were going to get something entirely different after that.
Yes.
So I think that, again, in a weird way, they gave us what we were expecting and then took it 3 or 4, 5, 6 steps further.
Which was very cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, so I think, I saw it twice. I saw it with more of a critics crowd, and then I went and watched it again with the guys who had done the 22 movie marathon, and they were, I mean, both audiences were pretty wild and into it. What was interesting is that both audiences were wild and into it at different places. There were certain things that one audience went crazy for that didn't play as well to the next audience, but there was other stuff in the movie that they went crazy for. So to me, that fans are hard to appease, and there's always going to be people who are upset with this or that. But what that told me was that they had done something that was hitting at least a couple different audiences. And granted, they're both probably for the most part passionate and people who are really into the films, or by default have been. You can't be a critic and at this point and probably not have seen at least half of the the Marvel Cinematic Universe, even if you don't want to. It's a professional hazard.
Yeah.
But I mean, even a lot of those people who have complained that the biggest problem with a lot of the Marvel films has been they never feel complete. This film feels complete, and it feels not only complete, but I think it feels it's a satisfying, things come to an end, but sometimes things end so poorly that kind of sours the rest of, the experiences that you've had prior to, and you really just don't, it's kind of, if this movie had gone terribly, would I really want to watch some of those other movies? And there might be less motivation to do so, but for me, this ends in a way that actually makes me consider watching some of the lesser movies again, to see if my initial response to them has changed at all now that I've seen kind of a full arc.
Well, on that, it's kind of how I've said in the past unfortunately, with these movies being so episodic, where they're episodes of a greater narrative, some chapters just, they have to tell that part of the story, and by the very nature of that part of the story, it just can't be as good as the other chapters. That's kind of been where I've given some of the leeway in the past with some of the Marvel movies that have underperformed, where this kind of ties everything together, and you can look back at it as a narrative. And yeah, even the lesser ones, they definitely brought something to the table. They did something that definitely added to the greater whole.
Yeah, I don't think they made those lesser films better, but they didn't dismiss them out of hand for the fans.
It gives them perspective.
It does. It doesn't necessarily make them better movies, but it does remind you that it kind of reminds you of like the shadowy corners of the MCU that, the rooms that you don't necessarily go in all the time, that you forget.
Yeah.
Oh, you kind of forget how sprawling. It's not just the Battle of New York. It's not. There's all the places from the Guardians movies. There's Asgard. There's all these places. So no matter how you feel about any one of them, this film reminds you that they are all important in their own way and interconnected in ways that you have to appreciate, even if you don't necessarily go back and look at those bits in isolation and think that they're necessarily better or worse.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's
but
and as far as the kind of completeness to it, yeah, that's one I'll say. Mark, be ready with the shut up Jason button. I'm going to try to say this. Try very hard to choose my words without spoiling anything. I don't know how it could have ended much better. Walking out, it's like, okay, where is there to go from this? So that was my, if I were to sum up walking out of the theater, that was my biggest thought. Is like, I don't know where there is to go from that.
Well, there's one storyline that I think is apparent, but a lot of the other it does wipe the slate fairly clean in that. Okay, so what's you built to this moment, and so yes, now what? Life continues, but and I have ideas, of course, but who doesn't?
Right.
But no, I do. There's been the talk about how the next Spider-Man film was actually part of Phase 3 or whatever. Yeah. But if that's the case, I guess it will feel like a postscript. It won't feel like. This movie feels pretty darn definitive.
Absolutely.
Which is something that we didn't necessarily get with the last Avengers film. This feels like it sticks.
Yeah, I agree, and I know they said that you're right that Spider-Man: Far From Home is the end of Phase 3. Because of the way this film is put together, you would almost not necessarily call Spider-Man, the postscript to Phase 3. It's like that bonus chapter. Epilogue. Well, it's like the bonus chapter they'll stick into a later edition of a book to tell you there's another one coming. So it's like chapter 1. It's like the longest. Spider-Man: Far From Home is like the longest credit scene teaser. And when we see it, we'll know that I'm absolutely wrong about that. But that's the kind of the way that I'm thinking about it. It's like, yeah, they're calling it the end of Phase 3, but really it's got to lead into something or lead to something. Well, it doesn't have to, I guess, but one can make that assumption based on the history of the MCU. So I like to think of it more as it's a really long stinger,
or maybe like the 17th ending of Return of the King.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to allow that, but no more Return of the King talk for now.
Okay, sorry.
So I'm going to allow it in this instance. Yes. This might be with the exception of The Winter Soldier, which stood so well in a vacuum as a film. This might be the most complete film story-wise that they've put together.
Well, yeah,
but it did take them 3 hours.
I would say I'm not sure about that, in the sense that this film wasn't about building characters as much as it was about rounding them off. So I think that it's hard for me the hardest films are those that introduce characters that you don't know and you have no connection with, and they have to establish a connection. And to use the Lord of the Rings as an example, that first film, not much happens, but you get invested in the characters, and that's the hardest thing. By the second and third film, and in this, by the time we're on our seventh or eighth film that this characters appeared in, we've established a relationship. So this film, from a writing perspective, to me, yes, you could screw up quite easily, but you don't have to worry about establishing a lot of the relationships between the characters because that's already been done. You can just make the story go.
Yeah. I can't disagree with that.
No.
We're going to run out of non-spoilery stuff to talk about. So let's just talk about. I mean, does anyone here not recommend this film?
No.
If you haven't enjoyed the Marvel Cinematic Universe at this point, I don't know that you'll enjoy this. But if you at least have a certain kind of, if you've liked some of it, I think yes, you should see this movie.
Yeah, If you don't like it, if you don't like them at all, you'll really hate this one.
Yeah, if you're completely, in the words of one friend of mine said, just completely superhero movied out, yeah, don't bother. Just seriously, don't bother seeing it.
Yeah.
But if you care at all about seeing where this is going, yeah, see it.
Yeah, it's absolutely. So that's where we're at. Is it too early to rank it in the pantheon of Marvel films? I know some people are just going to want to put it at number one because it's the end.
Yeah, it's not. I wouldn't do it there, but I think you could say that it's hard at this point not to kind of, some of the films to me get merged together because in the particularly phase 3 and whatnot, they kind of sorted out things a little better, I think, than they had before, and so it kind of blurs. And I just, I'm not going to rank. I'm just going to say that it's a fitting and really solid ending.
Yeah, I'd probably put it in. This is probably the first one in a while that I would put in the top tier. I wouldn't say it was the best, but I can't really rank them numerically. I'm more in like tiers, like say a top third, middle third, bottom third. This is the first one in a while that I would solidly put in the top third.
Okay, so then I'll wrap it up. I've seen, we've all seen all the movies multiple times at this point through various quirks and scheduling hoo-ha and ticketing hoo-has, I should say. I saw the movie twice last night, back to back.
Ow. Your poor kidneys.
No, there was enough time for a bathroom break. And I sat through the second one with a beverage. So, but having said that, this is the first movie that I can think of, and because I never watched any of them back to back, but just twice in a row. I wouldn't have expected, having watched 3 hours, and with all the feels, as it were, and then turning around and watching that exact same 3 hours, and getting. And no, literally, I haven't forgotten anything because it was literally 3 hours ago. And knowing what's coming and getting exactly all the same feels in exactly all the same spots in exactly all the same ways. Everything hit me the parts that I knew were coming that either made me happy, sad, depressed, or suicidal, depending on the situation. I felt happy, sad, depressed, or suicidal. Yeah. So that's how much we are invested in these characters at this point, that I could literally watch it twice in a row and feel exactly the same through both films. I mean, in a good way. You know what I mean?
It's because you're a fan of the characters and you care about the characters. So the emotional parts, yeah, you do feel those, and you feel happy for them, and you feel bad for them.
But even just the anticipation to the same points, because even in the first one you kind of see things coming, and then when it hits, you're good, and in the second time you know it's coming, but you see it coming.
Oh yes,
again, it's bam, it's exactly the same way, and I was just amazed that I was just like, yep, that was like 6 of the best hours I've ever spent watching one film. No, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of add to that in the sense that, so I got to see this Tuesday morning, and then Wednesday night I was at a screening for a different film, and as I was leaving that film, I was like, you know what, I wanted to see, the Avengers again. I wanted to see Endgame again right then. And, I walked out of another movie and I was like, oh, I want to go see, and obviously it was Wednesday. And so it wasn't out yet. That to me was like this, like I was in such a mood to see it. And it's kind of like, I guess when you want to have a particular kind of food.
Yeah.
And once you get that kind of desire, that it's not going to stop until you actually go and have that kind of food. And that's, I knew that I wasn't going to stop wanting to see Endgame, like a serious craving for it, and until I went and that's why I went in and saw it again on Thursday, because it was going to bug me and it was going to stick with me until I saw it, and that might hit me again. But I definitely needed to see it those two times in just a matter of a couple of days. So yeah, I totally get going into it and then coming out of it and going back into it.
And I'm going to see it again in the theater at some point this week because I have to take. I'm going to try to get the wife to it. So I'm going to see it again. But I can't. There's not a lot of movies that I'm just like I have to see it much. Again that fast. Much less in the theaters. It's not like, well, okay, I can watch it on TV or whatever. But there's something about this film, and then you put it up on that screen and it's just ridiculous.
Well, and I've seen people commenting, "Oh, I'll just wait for the DVD."
It is not going to be the same.
Nope. You're doing yourself a disservice.
And I know that sounds, well, but it's inconvenient and blah blah. You know what? There are certain things that should be experienced on the largest screen that you can possibly find, and this is one of those. For one reason, if no other, is because there are certain scenes where there's so much going on that you just won't catch nuances, and there's certain things you just won't see on the TV unless you know they're there, and there's also something. I love. That second time I saw it, I kind of, because like you said, we kind of know what's coming at that point. It's not really surprises, but the people around you who haven't seen it yet, it's like, I wonder how they're going to react to this, and that's why, I decided to go to the screening that was at the end of the marathon. Because I could get in. Tickets weren't that easy to get necessarily, although they added a lot of screens as the night went along. But I also wanted to see it with those people. I wanted to see it with the people who were so crazy about the MCU that they've literally would spend 3 days of their lives watching the MCU from start to this end. And I wanted to be, I wanted a crowd that was going to be into it, and they were everything I wanted that to be, and I think it does make a difference. A shared experience, it makes a difference.
It does
with films.
The audience makes a difference.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. There was a guy behind us. He was so excited. I think half the women in the audience might be pregnant now. He was that excited. And then a woman in front of me immediately noticed when I was sitting there, these are people who would recognize my Winter Soldier hoodie as not being one that has an unmatching shoulder. Would immediately recognize that stuff. Mm-hmm. So those are the people you need to see this movie with. Your uncaring wife or girlfriend isn't the person you need to experience it with in your living room.
And people might be like, well, but I want to see it without anyone interrupting and that sort of thing. And yeah, I totally get that. There are points where it's like, you know what, this is going to play different for me if I was in an empty theater than it does, but in a theater packed with people. And generally, I'm not a big proponent of cheering and clapping and talking in movies and whatever, but when it's so impulse, there's nothing, it just happens. When it's just an honest response from people, it's really hard for me to get frustrated with that. It's completely different than, the kid who's just showing off for his friends in a horror movie or whatever, which is probably the most annoying thing in the world. In this, it's like a kind of a gleeful excitement.
Genuine enthusiasm.
Yes, yeah. Exactly.
And it's got to be genuine.
And quite frankly, there were lines that I missed in the first time seeing it because we were reacting to whatever line came before it, that I did finally get in the second screening. And it didn't make, I mean, not getting one or two lines here or there isn't that big of a deal, but it was interesting to see the movie and go, oh, I missed that.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that the first time. Okay, I got this now.
If to go without spoiling anything, if you are a fan of the characters, it will definitely make you feel ways about things. So, I mean, feel very strongly about things.
Yeah. There's a lot of feels.
Yes.
A lot of feels.
But most importantly, can we talk about how many haircuts happen?
No, you might be treading into spoiler territory.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yes, I got my hair cut off after my White Wolf Bucky.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up the spoiler-free edition of the Visually Stunning Movie Podcast look at Avengers Endgame. If you want spoilers, we're going to turn around and we're going to record another episode that's really nothing but spoilery talk.
Oh, yes.
So if you want to hear that, feel free. But until then, I'm Mark. That's Ryan. Bye, Ryan.
See you guys.
Jason, thanks for being here.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm glad to make it.
And we will see everyone around the Megaplex.